Danish far-right racist Rasmus Paludan comes to Sweden, burns the Quran again, he has done this many times, on Saturday, this time in front of the Turkish embassy. Now, what is interesting about this entire context is that Sweden is in the process of negotiating with Turkey to join NATO, and so is Finland, and the negotiations between Sweden and Turkey has not gone so well. There has been some controversies. Erdogan wants Kurds are protesting in Sweden, etc. And during this time, far-right racist Rasmus Paludan decides to go and burn the Quran in front of the Turkish embassy. And this has caused an uproar in the Muslim world and huge condemnations around the Muslim world. Now, I am born and raised in Sweden, and I am a Swedish Muslim. And I am known on Swedish TikTok to be one of the most critical voices about these Quran burnings. So I feel that I want to say a few words about this. Now, first of all, there is tremendous amount of Islamophobia in Sweden. I was bullied as early as 4 years old in kindergarten in Västerort, Stockholm, Sweden, for having a Muslim name. I have not even wanted to speak loudly about me being Muslim in Sweden because I know that people have so much prejudice in Sweden. So Sweden is also a country where you have a Nazi party, Sverigedemokraterna, that have Nazi roots, founded by Nazis, filled with neo-Nazis, and they have kind of whitewashed it and calmed down that Nazi rhetoric, but existed for around 30 or so years. That is 20%. So you have a far-right party affecting Swedish politics. You have a lot of immigrants in Sweden, some 8% Muslims, I being one of them, but I'm not an immigrant, I'm born and raised in Sweden. And there is a lot of systematic racism. Now you see increased gang violence, you see shootings almost every day, mostly by Muslim immigrants, first, second generation immigrants, Somalis, Afghanis, Eritreans, etc. Iraqis also, and Syrians and so on. There's so many involved in that. There definitely is racism in Sweden. And these Quran burnings show the wider issue of racism that exists in Sweden. Sweden has done wrong towards Muslims. A country that allows for a mad person going and burning the Quran in front of an embassy. That's not a normal country. To Swedish people, nej, det är inte normalt. Det är ingenting som är normalt med det här. It's not normal. But when you are sick, your sickness tends to normalize certain things. When you live in shit smells normal to you. And this is what is so significant about this news. Why Turkey has condemned it, Saudi Arabia has condemned it, Oman has condemned it, Kuwait has condemned it, Jordan has condemned this, Pakistan has condemned this, Iran has condemned this, African Union has condemned it, Iraq has condemned it, Egypt has condemned. So basically the entire Muslim world goes out and protects us. Swedish Muslim, alhamdulillah. It's so beautiful, the solidarity, and I know that a lot of Swedish Muslims are feeling incredibly solidaric towards all of the love and support they get from the Ummah. And my coverage of this news has helped me now even reach 20,000 followers on Swedish TikTok. Some of my videos have 450,000 views on Swedish TikTok. That's 4% of the population. And even on my international channel, please check out my TikTok, by the way. Some of my videos have 120,000 views, international, TikTok on this subject matter. So yes, it's definitely a big news. It's definitely something that people around the world are talking about, mainly in Sweden. It's a big news, but even other places. And a society that allows for you to humiliate people like this, turn them down, push them down, already Muslim minority that is oppressed in Sweden, have difficult time getting job, are discriminated at their workplace, are subjected to racism, are unfairly treated in the law, now have someone just humiliating and belittling their Muslim like this, the Muslim population like this. And the main argument that Sweden uses to justify this is that it falls within freedom of speech. So it's freedom of speech. But that is actually legally not true, because freedom of speech in every country that has freedom of speech is limited And in Sweden, it's limited with hate speech, or what you call hets mot folkgrupp. So freedom of speech is a limited regulation where you are, sure, allowed to be free, even in a modern liberal sense, as long as you don't harm other people. Now, this kind of bigoted hatred behavior is obviously harming and obviously will lead to more persecution of Muslims. So it is hate speech. And the funny thing about this is that the Quran burnings have never been tested in court in Sweden. So there is no verdict on this. So legally, we don't even know if this is freedom of speech or hate speech. We don't know which legal classification it goes under. But there are some cases of Rasmus Paludan, the racist, the far-right Danish guy with Swedish citizenship also, have been, they have called the police on him. And they have pressed charges against him. But the lawyers have put down the charges. Now that's something very interesting to me. Why have the lawyers not looked into this case and taken it to court? Because this again highlights the systemic racism that exists in Sweden. Because it's a white guy, he's assumed to be practicing his freedom of speech. But if a Muslim would do something equivalent to this, burning the pride flag or the Torah in front of the Jewish embassy or something like that, he would probably be put to jail. But a white guy is allowed to burn the Quran in front of the Turkish embassy. This just shows that Muslims do not have the same right under law in Sweden, because freedom of speech and hate speech is obviously interpreted in a way that it benefits certain groups, but it does definitely not benefit Muslims. And this has caused a big outrage all over the Muslim world. Thank you for all the international Muslims who show love to us, because we have been suffering in Sweden. My father has been suffering, I have been suffering, and so many other Muslims that are following me on TikTok. But also it complicates Swedish NATO application, because currently Turkey is not willing to let Sweden join NATO. And Sweden has been very vocal and aggressive and provocative towards Russia, its large nuclear-armed neighbor in the other side of the Baltic Sea. This is also a story I've covered in detail, have up to 800,000 views on international TikTok, where I've talked about some of the reasons why Russia cannot allow Sweden and Finland joining NATO, because then NATO will surround St. Petersburg. They cannot allow that. St. Petersburg is in the Baltic Sea. They cannot allow all of those waters being NATO waters. That's just, it's not on the map. Anyways, so now Sweden is in a situation where it has discriminated against Muslims, LVK, missbruk, and all of these kinds of issues that Muslims are trying to raise in Sweden, which the Swedish politicians gaslight or tell you that be grateful or go home if you don't like it here. I'll go home where I'm born in Sweden, but they don't even see me as Swedish. I don't care. I don't even see myself as Swedish, but I do have same rights as everyone else in Sweden or in Netherlands or anywhere else. Anyway, so Sweden has discriminated against Muslims. Now Sweden has kind of declared a hostility openly to the Muslim world. The Muslim world has reacted. Sweden has declared hostility to Russia. And the Muslim nation Turkey, with 99.8% Muslims, will likely not allow Sweden to join NATO. There have been huge protests in Turkey. They have burned the Swedish flag, etc. So Sweden has provoked the Muslim world and Russia and will likely not join NATO. So Sweden is not protected. All I have to say is what Jesus said. As a man soweth, the same shall he also reap. Som man bäddar får man ligga. Assalamu alaikum.